Hello, and welcome all to Movie Hunter, the show that tracks down the quality of all sorts of movies. My name is Hunter, and today in the 10th episode, our target is Megamind, produced by DreamWorks Animation and PDI/DreamWorks, and distributed by Paramount Pictures. Real quick, just to clear up any confusion, last week I was sick and unable to release a video, hence why 2 videos are releasing today. Somewhat convenient timing, as today is our 10th episode, which isn't a huge number, but it's still cool to see, and to somewhat celebrate we get 2 episodes released, so that's kinda cool. Anyhow, back to your regular scheduled programming. Megamind first released in Russia on October 28th, 2010, and in the US on November 5th, 2010. The film was DreamWorks Animation's 22nd film, after 2010's Shrek Forever After, and before 2011's Kung Fu Panda 2. The film was directed by Tom McGrath, who also directed the Madagascar trilogy and the Boss Baby duology. The film was written by Alan Schoolcraft and Brent Simmons, and was produced by Laura Bere and Denise Nolan Cascino. It was edited by Michael Andrews and was composed by Hans Zimmer and Lorne Balfe. The cast includes Will Ferrell, David Cross, Brad Pitt, Tina Fey, Jonah Hill, Ben Stiller, and J.K. Simmons. The film made $321.9 million on a budget of $130 million. Unfortunately, the timing of this film resulted in many unfavorable reviews, claiming that it was unoriginal and reeking of similarity to the films The Incredibles and Despicable Me. The film was nominated for 9 awards, of which it didn't win any of. It also didn't help matters that DreamWorks released movies for their biggest franchises around this time, in the form of How to Train Your Dragon, Shrek Forever After, and Kung Fu Panda 2. However, the film did gain much popularity a number of years later through internet reviews and memes. Megamind did get an animated short follow-up called Megamind: The Button of Doom. More recently, it got a sequel movie, Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate, and the show, Megamind Rules, both of which were reviewed horribly by fans for their cash-grab nature and lack of appreciation to the original. A bit of interesting behind-the-scenes information is that Robert Downey Jr. was considered for the role of Megamind, as well as Ben Stiller, who was later hired to play a much smaller role of Bernard. The film follows Megamind, a superhero in the town of Metro City, which he pronounces Metrocity, who is sent there by escape pod as a baby after his planet is swallowed by a black hole, with the neighboring planet having the same idea and sending a baby by escape pod as well. This baby would become Metro Man, the superhero and savior of Metro City. The first baby, Megamind, however, would crash land in prison, while Metro Man landed in the house of wealthy people. When they went to school, Metro Man easily gained the appreciation of his peers, while Megamind couldn't seem to no matter what. Megamind then described how he realized that he was only good at being bad, and it occurred to him that if that is all he can do, then he might as well strive to be the best at being bad. The film then cuts to them as adults, and Megamind and his sidekick Minion, who is in the escape pod with him, kidnap Roxanne, the news reporter, which is quickly realized to be a common occurrence that Megamind uses to lure Metro Man. Metro Man goes to save her, but it turns out that Megamind wasn't in his usual place, instead a new one, and Metro Man seems weakened by the copper lining, and Megamind fires a death ray upon him, killing him. Everyone, including Megamind and Minion, are shocked that Metro Man was actually killed, and so the duo take over Metro City and run rampant through the streets. Quickly, however, Megamind becomes bored without the purpose that fighting Metro Man gave him, and almost gets spotted by Roxanne when visiting the Metro Man Museum, so he quickly disguises himself as the employee there, Bernard. Roxanne and Megamind, under the disguise of Bernard, begin forming a friendship that develops into a romantic interest. Megamind, becoming happier after his conversations with Roxanne, is inspired to create a new hero that he can battle, and accidentally fires the power-giving device at Hal, Roxanne's cameraman, who is helplessly in love with her in ways that are very dismissive to her wants. Megamind trains him through the disguise of his space dad, and Hal becomes Titan, hoping that it will make Roxanne fall for him. Things go downhill when Roxanne finds out that Bernard is really Megamind, and tells him off for tricking her and the other bad things he has done. On top of that, Titan learns that Roxanne doesn't care about how he looks, only his actions, and decides that he doesn't want to be a hero anymore, because he was only in it for Roxanne. As such, he begins taking over the city, and Megamind and Roxanne have to discover his weakness, leading them to find that Metro Man is still alive, and faked his death because he was tired of being who everyone wanted him to be, except himself. Megamind returns to Metro City and turns himself in, only to be broken out by Minion, who returns after having left because of Megamind's good deeds. They go and devise a plan to save Roxanne, who is kidnapped by Titan to lure Megamind. I can't believe I didn't notice this similarity until writing this summary, but just goes to show the great writing. Megamind fights him under the disguise of Metro Man, which frightens him off, but Roxanne decides to take the disguise off Megamind so that the world can see his good deed. But Titan returns, realizing he's been tricked, and Megamind must fight him again, not as Metro Man, but with his own inventions and intellect. Megamind is able to return Titan to Hal and throw him in prison, and Megamind becomes the new hero of Metro City. To begin, I feel like this is a good opportunity to return to the discussion of comedy in my Monsters, Inc. review Sorry about that. To begin, I feel like this is a good opportunity to return to the discussion of comedy. In my Monsters, Inc. review, I created some vague guidelines for what made comedy work and not work, with the promise to edit them as time progressed. To be honest, I haven't found any major changes that I feel like I should make yet, so this will mostly serve as an attempt to explain why the comedy in this film is so good by utilizing my guidelines and seeing how it works out. First, I should quickly re-explain the rules, as well as better emphasize that these are not strict rules. Rather, they are supposed to serve as a helpful guide to comedy and are easily expandable. The guidelines are as follows. A joke should have 1. Characterization, 2. Timing, and 3. A twist. All of these can stand alone, with the exception of a twist, but more on that later. But the more the better. With that said, let's get started. Megamind is an extremely funny movie, and you don't need me to tell you that, as the internet has taken to referencing numerous lines in the film. I'll take some of the jokes and quickly run through the process, as a long, detailed analysis of a joke quickly kills all humor. On the whole, the movie does successfully implement all 3 rules, such as Megamind playing off the fact that there is a spider next to the kidnapped Roxanne, and he pretends that it is a deadly spider that he has purposely put there, only for Roxanne to blow it in his face and Minion slapping him to the ground, trying to get the spider off. This joke has characterization from all 3 involved, excellent timing in the telling of the joke, and the twist when things quickly backfire for Megamind. One joke that got me thinking about my rules a bit more is a pretty famous one where Titan says, "There is no Easter Bunny, there is no Tooth Fairy, and there is no Queen of England," keeping in mind that the Queen of England was still alive during the time of this film's release. This made me consider adding a 4th rule, that being nonsense. Essentially, it would be a type of joke rather than a rule of a joke, which is one of the reasons why I ultimately decided not to add it. But more importantly, I think that it easily overlaps with 1. Characterization, with Hal being the perfect person to tell this joke due to his lack of general intelligence in its various forms throughout the film. And 3, a twist, with a pretty surprising reveal here, with him mentioning the Queen of England as if she were a holiday mascot. Thinking about other forms of humor that nonsense could be helpful for, I thought about cartoons where a character drops an anvil or a piano on another character, or in Looney Tunes where Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck argue about whether it's rabbit season or duck season. Basically any joke where all forms of logic and foundational human knowledge has left the conversation. But I still ended up feeling like these jokes were still quantified by the existence of 3, a twist, and 1, characterization, though maybe less so of the character and more so the characterization of the fictional world. In the end, comedy is still a difficult thing to discuss, and Megamind is just really funny. So, if you have any suggestions for these guidelines to comedy, please let me know. But I'll leave it at that for now, as discussing comedy for long periods of time can, ironically enough, get the exact opposite result of what a good joke accomplishes. Next, I'd like to briefly discuss the obvious Superman parody, which, upon the film's release, was a heavily criticized aspect of the film, and I wish to talk about why it was not only a positive part of the film, but how it actively helps one of the themes. So, in case it was not obvious at this point, Megamind takes a lot of inspiration from Superman. Megamind and Metro Man's backstories are identical to Superman's. Megamind is a sillier Lex Luthor. Metro Man is a more powerful and more egotistical Superman. A fun fact, Metro Man's song that he sings at the end of the film, where he talks about how his X-ray vision allows him to see through lead, is a reference to the fact that Superman's X-ray vision can't. And finally, Roxanne is a Lois Lane type of character, who isn't romantically interested in the superhero. These contrasts to the original seem like a perfect setup for a funny parody, and it is. But more so than that, it provides a great setup for the characters, who they are, and their individual arcs, which I will discuss in more specific detail later. Megamind is a funnier Lex Luthor, but he is also a Lex Luthor who ends up winning. This film, in a way, tells a story of a Lex Luthor who beats Superman, but now doesn't know what to do, and is forced to reconsider his reasons for being evil in the first place. Metro Man is a more powerful and thus undefeatable Superman. The story is able to further develop this by having Metro Man become bored of just easily winning, of being without struggle. This film also delivers a what-if Superman never lost or struggled story. Roxanne doesn't like Metro Man in the way that Lois Lane likes Superman, so her story revolves around everyone having the preconceived notion that she does like Metro Man because he always saves her. Now the story is delivering a what if Lois Lane didn't love Superman story. The film is able to parody Superman, but also go a step further by making it integral to the themes of the movie. Speaking of those themes, let's discuss the one of Megamind. What makes Megamind's dilemma so interesting is that he doesn't want to be evil in the beginning, and it seems that everything he does leads to him being punished for it. Because of everyone only seeing him as bad, he decides that that is what he was destined for. He goes into a life of being a supervillain, and is unsuccessful in ever defeating Metro Man. When he actually does, or at least thinks he does, he is quickly overcome with a sense of lack of purpose. He has no obstacles anymore, and is unhappy with where the final goal of being a supervillain has led him. He assumes the identity of Bernard, and is allowed to be his true self. He still lacks some common knowledge and social awareness due to his lifestyle, but at his core, he genuinely comes to care about Roxanne and wants to see her happy. But when Roxanne finds out the truth, she abandons him, and rightfully so, and Megamind relapses and returns to being a villain. He goes to confront Titan in a fight, but discovers that he has become a villain after not getting Roxanne. Megamind, in complete foolishness, taunts Titan into wanting to fight him by revealing that he was his mentor, Space Dad, and that he was also Bernard, the guy Roxanne was going out with. Had Megamind been thinking, he would have seen that Titan was extremely powerful and that he lacked the hero qualities. But he is not thinking, and he only cares about trying to get things back to normal, and so he will do anything to get Titan to fight him. He succeeds in this regard, and Titan goes fully berserk on him with the intent to kill, forcing Megamind to flee. Realizing what he's done, he apologizes to Roxanne for all that he has done, and talks to her about him wanting to really be a better person, and the two go searching for things about Metro Man that could be used to take down Titan. They discover that Metro Man is still alive, having faked his death to live out a different life. More on that later, and he refuses to play the hero again. Megamind, with no better plan, turns himself into prison, only for Minion to come back and rescue him. Minion and Megamind reunite and devise a plan to save Roxanne, who is kidnapped by Titan after trying to confront him. Minion disguises himself as Megamind and to save Roxanne, while Megamind disguises as Metro Man to scare off Titan. Now, this is an important detail. Megamind pretends to be Metro Man because he doesn't think that he can stop Titan. Only Metro Man can. On top of that, he isn't ready to have the world see him as a hero yet. However, Roxanne switches off his disguise so that the world can see his good deed, and Megamind feels happy after this. And when Titan returns, Megamind defeats him not as Metro Man, but as Megamind, and he uses his inventions and wits to defeat him once and for all. Megamind's journey has the theme of not being who the world makes you out to be, self-realization, and making your own destiny. Metro Man is a character who I've always found to be really interesting and present an even more interesting question that the movie doesn't really present an answer to, rather leaving it up to the audience. The funny thing is, Metro Man is in the exact same position Megamind is. He always was exactly what the world perceived him as. What his introduction scene does so well is that it not only gets perfectly across who Metro Man is, strong, beloved, and somewhat egotistical, but the whole charade of Megamind and Metro Man fighting is pretty generic. The scene is not seen that way by the audience because of the funny jokes and clever writing, but from Metro Man's perspective, this is the exact same situation he finds himself in all the time, and it's getting really stale. So Metro Man fakes his death and abandons ship to chase his own aspirations. This opens the interesting philosophical question of whether he was in the right for doing this or not. This dilemma is very similar to that in Spider-Man 2, where Peter stops being Spider-Man to improve his personal life. That film, however, takes the stance that Peter should not quit, as he was given a gift and he shouldn't waste it. Megamind, though, leans in the other direction, with Metro Man staying retired and claiming that if evil rises, good will rise up against it. It is a very interesting dilemma. Should a person with exceptional gifts have to use them, even at the cost of their personal life? It's a very interesting question to me that doesn't really have an answer. That's kind of the whole point of philosophical questions, after all. And I really like the partial silence the film takes on it. When Roxanne asks Metro Man how he could just abandon the city, he simply doesn't have an answer. The final character I'd like to discuss, albeit much more briefly, is Titan. Hal Stewart, whose name derives from two different Green Lanterns as yet another connection to Superman, contrasts Megamind's arc in a lot of ways. He believes that he is owed Roxanne's affections because of his superpowers, and he doesn't see her as a person, but a thing to be won. He acts very creepy as a result of this, and pretty much every scene he is in gives an icky sort of feeling. Hal also serves as a great villain. He is the unsettling factor, as we've discussed, but he was harmless by and large. But when he gains Metro Man's powers, he becomes extremely powerful and dangerous. His training with the disguised Megamind even briefly results in Megamind being pulled out of his illusion and being temporarily scared of his power. Titan serves as a really good villain, and he also does a good job tying into the main story. Finally, I'd like to quickly compliment something about the film that I really like. Megamind's inventions are extremely creative and variable. The disguising watch, the dehydration gun, the brain bots, the invisible car, and the Metro Man powers giving gun. I don't think they ever give it a more concise name. They're all constantly used and in very creative ways. This allows you to know Megamind's arsenal, and this makes the fight scenes much more engaging. Speaking of which, the fight scenes in this film are phenomenal. Very creative and fast-paced and funny. Really good stuff. Also, while I'm complimenting little parts of the film, I also really like Minion. He just really plays off Megamind well. Just some small stuff that I wanted to add before finishing. Overall, I give Megamind a 9 out of 10 for being a very fun and clever film. The film delivers great comedy and really good messages. The characters are fun, and so is the story. Just really great through and through. Highly recommend. Well, that's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to share any opinions you had on the movie. A new episode releases each week, so stay tuned to see which film I cover next. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.